This is the Working in Hell podcast with your host, Vinny Blasio. Each episode, Vinny takes you inside the world of New York State Corrections, focusing on both corrections officer and law enforcement issues. And now your host, Vinny Blasio.
All right, everyone. This is Vinny Blasio, and I'm your host for the Working in Hell podcast. So today I am here alone with no special guests. We have a lot to get to, so we'll jump right into it again and see where this goes. We're going to be with all the actions that are happening in this last couple weeks since we were last on. There's been a lot of activity, especially in the last couple of days, a lot of newsworthy events. So we'll jump into the news as a whole, since we have so much information to get out today. We have new memos from the commissioner, new memos to the inmates that he is commissioner of. So we have a lot of information to get to. So let's take a look. All right, so getting right into the much news and different information is going to be coming out in the next couple of days, especially since this podcast takes place. There's been a couple of news articles that have been less than flattering for correction officers, with a civil suit that happened in central New York, and then some incidents that happened at the Marcy Correctional Facility sometime last week. And that we'll let play out. I'm not going to comment on that, and nor do I think it's beneficial for me to comment on that at this time. We'll kind of see where that news goes and the investigations take place. So the information that's been out there, we've seen a lot of different things happen throughout the correctional facilities, and it seems like there's not the same enthusiasm when it comes to officers' assaults as there is for some of the other information. It seems like every outlet picks up on juicy tidbits, but then when it comes on officers getting hurt, and I get that feedback a lot, and that's just the way the news cycle runs. It's one of the reasons why I try to get my news and information from different podcasts, in addition to your regular news outlets, to try to come and get everything from a well-rounded source, and you can get things that are accurate and kind of come to your own conclusion, whether it's left, right, middle, what have you. You can kind of discern and get your information from not your traditional sources. So again, we're going to get into some of the news. Like I said, that's been out there. We just had a death that was at Greenhaven, I believe last week, the last end of last week at Greenhaven from alleged overdose. There's some situations there. Dan Martuscello, the commissioner of DOCCS, was at the NYCOBA Executive Assembly. We'll touch on that, and a personal attack was launched. So game on. Let's go to work. We got many messages that have come in from not only correction officers and supervisors, but a lot of information has come to me, and a lot of support and questions and frustration coming in now from family members, as I don't believe the department is going to sustain the way the New York State Department of Corrections, that is. I see how other agencies that I work with, how they handle things, and I see how this commissioner, his ego drives him to a lot of these silly things that he puts out. And I think a lot of that is going to implode very shortly, and we'll get into some of those caveats here in a second. So the DOCCS numbers, let's get into that. Here is as I told you last week, we had the DOCCS fact sheet. So we're right into the high of corrections assaults on staff statewide, from the high of 1672 of 2023 to, as of December 1st, and we spoke of this at the last podcast, that's now at 1938. And we also have the assaults on inmate, and that's at 2697 compared to a prior high of 2023, whereas 2000 113. And you can kind of see the chart here that I have for those that are on the video version of it that I put up. So as the trajectory goes up and continues to go up, there doesn't seem to be a relief in sight other than those are getting hurt. And in the illustrious words of our commissioner, most assaults are deemed either they just didn't, no one got hurt at all, or they're non-serious assaults. And you can see that by his own, and they label the caveat of what is serious, moderate, and what have you. It doesn't mean that anybody agrees with them, but let them have what they may, I guess. As you see in this chart here, no injury, minor, moderate, serious. Someone gets banged in the back of the head with fire extinguishers and someone gets a finger bit off, that doesn't count, I suppose, in these illustrious statistics. But be that as it may, as you can see, we're also looking at the staffing and population compared to 2023, with correction sergeants and lieutenants, we had 15,143. And as you look at the difference for as of December 1st, 2024, that has been reduced to 13,998. So again, that the trajectory is low. Also were just 2 prisons that also closed. And we'll get into some of these other caveats that are here too, as far as the violence of the incarcerated individuals. I'm not used to saying that term, so I'll go back to saying inmate. The percentages of the violent offenders, and here we're showing inmate deaths. The last we spoke, there was an inmate death, but they did not have it categorized. But here's the inmate deaths, as you can see. And this information is readily available. This is not my information. This comes directly from the DOCCS website, and you can find that on doccs.newyork.gov. And you can look in their research reports or their monthly report section of their website, and that gives you the full categorization of the assaults, and that's updated monthly. There's also a section on there that breaks it down for HALT and gives you a little month by month comparison to that as well. So for those that are following along on the Vinny News group on Facebook, we did three polls, and we're going to get to those results here. So we are looking at the very first assaults, are the very first poll here. I'm sorry, get the assault page out. Let me add that on too. So we went into, this was conducted, it started on 12/5 of 2024. This is the first poll. Let me get this out. This is the same one. Here we go. All right. And this is poll 1 of the 3. The background for this poll was recently I received many emails concerning political actions and statement by elected officials. Example, the Democrat Socialist of America and the Stop Cop movement, and comments about, quote unquote, no appetite to repeal HALT. That was made by Assemblyman and Assembly Correction Chair, Assemblyman DeLon. And the question was, do you support giving money to the same politicians that agree to halt bail reform, raise the age, clean slate, elder parole, and prison closures? And the 2 poll questions were, yes, my money should go to these same politicians. You have to be in the game to try and make changes. And as we can see, that came out with 0 votes. So out of 169 that participated in that vote, you can see in the poll, 0 chose that route, and 169 votes, or 100%, said no, my money would be better used elsewhere than people who are slicing my own throat. And that goes pretty much in accordance with all the comments that are out there as well, because the poll results just time and time again don't believe that people are getting their bang for their buck and giving to some of these politicians, especially in New York. We know that that's a pay to play state, and you have to grease the wheel, so to speak, to try to motivate people. But if you're going to give to politicians and something like this, give to those that support you, not to those that are, as I put in there, slice your own throat, so to speak. Give to those and make them prove to you. If you're going to make a donation and somebody's going to do something for you, fine, but make them prove to you that they're doing it first. Why give them a blank check only to find out that they're hurting you, not helping you? So we'll take that out. The next poll I deleted by accident. That was on the same premise of the political action that you've seen in the first poll. So I don't have that for the screen, but that was also along with, would you rather see your political money given to a policy taking out for you for long-term, short-term health sure, or for insurance to take that if you got assaulted on the job? And that came back overwhelmingly, as you would suspect. Instead of giving money and wasting donations on political donations, have it go back to the members that are their dues money is paying for that, and political action funds, and that would go back to them in a long-term, short-term disability protection, as opposed to giving money for politicians. And we're going to speed things up a little bit because we have a lot of content to get to. So the third poll that we have here, and this was going back from 12/6 of 24, and that was that on the site? Yes, 12/6, and this is the third poll. Many people have brought forward during the last survey and polls the idea of filing a suit due to poor working conditions, mandatory overtime, and high degree of injuries. It was one of the largest complaints and issues that were brought forward from the previous surveys. And the background to this is DOCCS' own facts and data show a year after year rise on assaults to inmates and to staff. We just went through that. Data also shows the record-breaking assaults, mandatory overtime, health and safety issues, and security breaches by DOCCS in New York State have placed staff in grave danger. We're going to get to a couple of these memos and stuff that's coming out. Who would have known just a couple of weeks later that we'd be talking about some of the stuff we're going to be talking about shortly. So this poll kind of plays into exactly the conversation that we're having today. And the question is, do you support a lawsuit or claim filed by New York State DOCCS and New York State on behalf of the staff by attorneys or outside counsel? So basically filing a lawsuit because your work environment is unsafe, and hitting all the record number of assaults, making sure that the facilities are secure, your mandatory overtime, health and safety issues, driving back after a triple. I can't believe that that's not a health and safety concern. Releasing your personal information, like what happened at one of the facilities when they released everybody's social security numbers. So yes, I support a lawsuit filed regardless of the outcome. It's time to protect and fight. And as you can see, 99% of those who participated in the poll agreed with that. So that was 99%, 311 support. Yes, I support a lawsuit filed regardless of the outcome. It is time to protect and fight. And that goes a long way. But like I said in the last podcast, when we had Mr. Dave Tesmer on, that a lot of people, when it comes to the lawsuits, they don't care at the end of the day. Yeah, everybody wants to win, but they just want to feel and know that somebody is fighting for them and protecting them. And as you can see in some of the chains of events that have happened lately, people do not feel that they're getting the support that they need right now, especially from attorneys and not getting a lawsuit filed. And we did have one vote. No, I do not support a lawsuit as it's a waste of time and resources. And on this, I also forgot to turn off on options. So I put on there, please do not add options. As that was the comment I won't say on air, but that was a pretty good comment. So we had 312 votes total, and we had a 311 saying, yes, I support it, and one no vote. So that takes care of the polls. And I wanted to get into something before I get into some of the information that I was able to glean from different sources with the memos that the commissioner has just released, the memo to the inmates, and also we'll get into a lot because the commissioner was invited to the NYSCOBA Executive Assembly to speak. Then how that was generated, for those that don't know or the public, was that there was a motion made that there was a vote of no confidence, and rightfully so, against the Commissioner Martuscello. And in lieu of the motion, and I don't know whatever happened, how that was disposed of, or if that's still going through. And we'll get to a lot of the personal emails that I received asking for a no confidence vote. But be that as it may, they had the commissioner speak, so that way he was able to hear firsthand from the members, the stewards that participated at the December Executive Assembly. I believe that was last Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. And having heard that and heard the information, and we'll get in depth on his comments. But one thing that was done at this executive assembly is Dan Martuscello, the commissioner of DOCCS, decided that he was going to try and hurt me in some way, and launch a personal attack on email exchange. And I've addressed this issue 6 months ago. I addressed it again in September. And for those that don't know, I'll address it again as far as, and you'll see my responses, which are also in writing, that at one point, yes, there was a point last November of 2023 where Erie County Corrections was able to get the 25-year retirement along with some caveats to make their job more palatable for not only those that are working it, which was something that they needed for a long time, but also to help with their retention and their recruitment efforts. So Erie County did pass this, and they were able to make changes to their pension and have a 25 and out retirement, similar to what the state has. So when that became law and that became news, I sent that article and I sent my thoughts to Commissioner Martuscello at that time. And I told him that, Erie County has these things. You may want to look at making the job better in some way, whether that's money or some type of tangible benefits for the officers and supervisors, because if I have the option of being away from home, or I can go to Erie County Corrections if I live in Erie County, New York, I'm going to go with Erie County, especially now that they have a pension that's on the same level as what DOCCS has. I would be foolish not to take that, as long as everything being equal, my time's going to count, everything, blah, blah, blah. So I said, you may think of working with ways on that. So, and at that time, and I've never hid from this, that I also supported the commissioner. It was the lesser of two evils for becoming commissioner. At that time, he was acting commissioner. He was not the commissioner of DOCCS. He was not confirmed by the Senate. But as we know, at this time he is. So obviously, because of my podcast, and more particularly because of what Mr. Martuscello did at the public protection hearings, and he kind of did this at the assembly meeting for the union last week too, is he threw the officers under the bus while he protected other classes of employees, and did the same thing, minimized assaults. And I sent him an email at that time, but though he leaves that out in his email, that I no longer supported him. I did a podcast on that, sent that directly to him. So it's kind of funny how, and I'll share this with you. Here's the email. And as you can see, it has Dan Martuscello right on the top. Martuscello, Daniel F. DOCCS. And anybody that's worked for DOCCS, that when you print off an email, that's exactly how it comes out. It's in color. So he has a color printer. I'm glad that DOCCS can afford color printing. So obviously he is the one that printed that. So how it gets distributed and made copies at a union function to try to discredit me, I'm not sure. But I'm not going to let it go. He blocks out his personal information. But as you can see here, my email is out there for the world to see. So he protects himself like he does, like a coward, and doesn't allow that same opportunity for everybody else. So that's the instrument that he does. And also we're on to the Mr. Martuscello trying to discredit me. And we look at this separate one. You can see that this was another copy. Someone, after I sent him an email, which I'm going to show you in a minute, they decided to block out my email address here as well. But you can see, same one, photocopy, no longer in color. There is the union location of the executive assembly. So that just goes to show how childish and immature this individual is. If you don't have thick enough skin to handle criticism and you're trying to discredit somebody, you have no business being the commissioner of DOCCS. And we'll get into some of that in a minute, as far as other things why he should not be the commissioner. And these are not just my thoughts. There was a petition that was going around, something I had nothing to do with, to fire the commissioner and to get rid of him, and besides the vote of no confidence. So obviously there's other people that share those same concerns. And we'll take that off and we'll add to the stage. Here is my email that when I was given the opportunity, or when someone advised me that this was floating around, the union assembly meeting, I sent that back to him on Wednesday, December 11th, 2024 at 10:32 p.m. And specifically told him, here, you have to do better than this. You're going to leak an email and try to make it seem like something more than it is. You should remove your heading. And you also left my email unmarked, which I just talked about before, but yet you covered yours up, LOL. So obviously he thinks he's slick, but as most people that know him know, including a lot of people that work directly for him, he's not the brightest bulb in the shed. So we will get into that. I just wanted to make sure that we knew, and as you can see, that some of these changes I went back, and you can see in this salary chart, this is going back over 15 years ago, and we have Dan Martuscello here. He was part of the instrumental. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but if anybody remembers going back to 2010 or right around that time frame, I'm not sure of the exact date, we made this salary chart and had this exhibit up for many weeks in the LOB in Albany. And this is that time we were trying to show how DOCCS keeps feeding the top. Brian Fisher there, you can see the picture of him, the commissioner at the time, and all these people that were making the salary. We showed that in heavy force, and that was quite effective. And not only did that we go, I have this exhibit at the LOB, Nice Copa also had hearings about how the administration was top heavy, and they always cut from the bottom to feed the top. And you can see one of his many positions, there's Martuscello again. How ironic that comes back. And then we get back to Mr. Martuscello again, which I love to have on every podcast, that he is the commissioner of corruption. I mean, let me rephrase, correction, commissioner of nepotism. As you can see, family members, all department and leadership positions. I did file a complaint with the Ethics Commission of New York State in regards to the nepotism that obviously this governor and commissioner obviously agree with, because we have all these tax dollars going to one family and one agency in New York State. I don't know how that's possible, but be that as it may, that's New York State. So I did file an ethics complaint. Maybe that's why he thought it was a good idea to try to slander me at the executive assembly and release an email that was already discussed, and it was really a moot point, but I think that's funny. And as we have the commissioner of nepotism go on, like I said, we raised this. I also sent, after he made the attempt to try to discredit me, the complaint back to ethics showing this is how a commissioner acts. And you can tell it's his own printed material. And this is released just basically trying to file, because of a complaint was filed. This is how you're going to retaliate. This is a commissioner that acts like a 2-year-old, childish, unprofessional. And anybody that knows him or works with him, 99% at least that I talk to, all say the exact same thing. And this goes back to 2010 when we were doing the commissioner, including Martuscello at that time. He didn't have that position. He was director of personnel. And you can see that we had the parking lot challenge of 2010. I just thought that it was great. That was hilarious. It made a point. It was very media savvy. At that time, it was the legislative director, Chris Leo, who made that. That was a really, really creative contest. But more than that, it drew attention to the agency that continues, even today, they continue to make these staffing. And if you look at the bureaucracy of Building 4 now, it's changed from Building 2, as you see on this parking lot challenge contest, that they cut the bottom to feed the top. And the positions, even now in Building 4, are just absolutely ridiculous. You want to save some money, there is your way to make your savings right there. I mean, it's just crazy, crazy, crazy. So we touched about the surveys. We got into the personal attack that Mr. Martuscello launched on me. Obviously, he had helped doing this to launch this off at the assembly meeting. So somebody is obviously helping him and carrying his water. So he didn't just do that alone. So obviously somebody is more in bed with him than they are anything else. And I'll leave it at that before I go off on another tangent. because I just believe that that's the actions of this are more than just somebody trying to discredit somebody. Like I said, I never hid from him and did send him an email saying that at one point. But if you're going to release an email, let's release all parts of it, not just those that are convenient for you. It's absolutely disgusting. So as we go on, as I said, that Mr. Martuscello, dirty as the day is long, has no business being the commissioner of DOCCS, just in his underhanded personal attacks and thin-skinned and ego-driven. But you can see that he loves the retaliation, which seems to be the good old boys club in DOCCS. Thought that they would learn from that, from past lawsuits. And I have those proudly displayed on my Vinny News Facebook group for anybody that knows. You've seen the different lawsuits that Mr. Martuscello has been involved in himself, how he gets promoted to commissioner when he has this stuff hanging over his head, has a checkered background, and he has these types of lawsuits and aggressive behavior in the past. And let's not forget a lot of the problems he's had, director of personnel, he's been deputy commissioner, executive deputy commissioner, and acting commissioner and commissioner. He's had all these titles, and he was there, whether it be the Clinton escape or any problem that DOCCS has had and the staffing crisis that they're on. He owns that. He was part of the problem, and he still is part of the problem today. So, but taking my personal disgust for the man and moving on to, his memos, and we'll get into some of this in a minute, because obviously he just recently launched about the body cameras. And not only did he do that in an unprofessional way, but he did it in such a way as far as making them a new policy for employees, but he did it a way to embarrass staff and to basically be punitive to the officer. And it's just how this man operates is just unbelievable. And he doesn't operate with the same enthusiasm for an officer getting assaulted as he does with other things that he does in his press releases and conversations. It's like, if you're going to have the same enthusiasm, be true and be the same way to everyone and everybody. And that's just not the case. When it comes to correction officers, there's no enthusiasm. And we'll get that because people told him that at the Union Executive Assembly meeting. So, and in that memo that he released, as far as the body cams, the officers, if they now have new responsibilities, that's not only going to hurt Management Confidential, because if I was Management Confidential, I would just go back to a role and say, why would I want to be captain or steward or whatever when I can just be done with this and go back to my item and make more money? And if I'm going to be working state doubles and everything else and have to come in on tour ones and tour threes, why would I do that? I would just say, you know what? Send me back to my security item. I'll make more money. So the policy and how he, on one hand, talks about he's got to do something, retention and recruitment, and then you come out and yell at staff, treat them like child, and you embarrass them, and then you expect retainment recruitment to pick up. It's just mind-boggling. I just can't get it. And let's not forget that this is the commissioner of pizza parties. Not his answer to fixing the assault problem that we just talked about and showed with the high level and record level of assaults is that he wants to do pizza parties and ice cream socials for the inmates. That's his answer. There's your numbers, highest ever. And we'll get to his remarks about the trajectory going up, up, and up. So we reward bad behavior with pizza parties and ice cream socials. But I digress. That's what we're up against. And that's who the governor instilled. And I guess that's where the buck stops. So we can now see that, like I said, with the memo, the supervisors will not have time to do supervisory rounds and supervisory duties, because they're basically going to be babysitting this new camera memo that he came out. And, like I said, this is the same commissioner that's been around for every bad thing that's ever happened to DOCCS. And he's part of the problem and gets rewarded. I guess that's the old adage of the state, that if you screw up, you get promoted. So, At the EA, he spoke, and as you can, for those that were there, or for those that saw or heard about the assembly meeting, you can see that he has totally lost the workforce. No one, morale was already bad and terrible, and now this commissioner, being in this executive assembly session, you can just hear it from the way people were talking to him and whatever, and people were very respectful, and he was respectful back. We won't take that away from him. But you can see he's lost his workforce. There's just no, no, I'm not going to say that people don't respect him, because even though I don't agree with him and the personal attacks that he's made on me, you still have to respect the position and respect the position that he's got. And people were very respectful to him. And that was good to see. But you could tell that he has lost. Not only did he lose the room, he's lost the workforce, especially the security workforce. I won't even say that at this point if they would even respect him, but anybody that works and goes in there knows exactly what I'm talking about. The thing that he did say proudly, and that was good to hear at the address to the union, that there was going to be no more closures this year and no more closures. He was going to recommend, let me rephrase that, he was not going to recommend any more closures for the next fiscal year. So two closures have already happened, and there was going to be no recommendation going forward from the new budget cycle, April 1st of 2025 going forward, to any more closures. So that was good. We talked about the staffing issues, and they finally had the largest class because of regional recruitment that they've had in the last 5 years. But he goes on to say that I know that you're underappreciated, but screw you. The way he phrased that, the way that I heard it, and I hope other people hear it the same way, it was very laughable, because it was like, I know how bad things are, I know this, but basically take it and leave it. It was not a very, as somebody else using their words, cavalier attitude. I would say the least, because it must have struck a nerve with him, because then he spent 15 minutes addressing his cavalier attitude. But as he put on, as far as the monetary value, as far as recruiting, that's everybody's biggest concern. So the mandate stop. His biggest thing was most of it has to be done with collective bargaining. Talked about GeoPay, about how that's with the governor, blah blah blah. We need retention. He did speak often, and that was probably 90% of the context was all about recruitment and retention. He did talk about supporting the salary grade increase. He said that he supported 1 grade, not 3, possibly 2, but he did not support for a 3-grade increase. But he did say that he did support an upgrade. So I guess 1 grade upgrade by the blessing of the commissioner is better than nothing. Obviously, as you know, the union, I believe, was asking for a 3 salary grade increase, and good for them, and rightfully so. And they have the material and statistics and data to back up the reason for that. The job has changed for everybody, from officers to sergeants to lieutenants. The job has just changed dramatically, and even in the last couple of years, it's changed again. So he talked about how the governor, someone asked him about the governor signed the bill for PTSD. He wasn't exactly overwhelmed with her signature of it. Talked about his concerns about it for workers' comp, and that people that went out with the PTSD, there's avenues for seeing a doctor or employee health services in the contract, and he would use those as he saw fit to try to get people back to work or see a doctor, so to speak. So not very favorable the way that I interpreted it, but again, that's my opinion only. But those words came out of his mouth. Talked about the academy and about people. The biggest reason when people were dropping out was that they were not fit. They wanted to come back to the academy when they thought that they could get their body back in shape, and other stuff about not having a babysitter and other avenues about reasons for the dropout. That basically that those he wanted a survey or an exit interview of those that left. Why are you leaving? And we'll get to why people are going to be leaving in droves, more than they already are. biggest thing, the other part that I got was out of that is listening to the post closings and removing items from the plot plan. His example was Fishkill yesterday closed 80 posts. And he went on very methodically to say that if they closed 80 posts, how many of those are actually needed? And that's always been a problem. And having been on the second floor of the governor's office arguing about jobs and going in with a fill of 100%, your budget fill level, every post open. And then if emergency situation arises, you close. Now we've come complete circle to the opposite because of the staffing crisis. Now they're closing as many posts as they can, running on short staffed. And the commissioner wants to, and it's a good scheme on him, but again, it's a scheme. These posts are needed. They were there for a reason. You have a plot plan with a budget fill level of officers you need on every shift, every day. And they're supposed to be reviewed every year by the Depth of Security and then resent to security staffing every year, saying that these posts are what we believe that they need. But Mr. Martuscello's context was 80 posts were closed yesterday at Fishkill because they don't have the staff to run the jail. And we've seen stuff being thrown over the fence because they were perimeter patrols and everything else were being mitigated. And yeah, those posts are needed, but yet, it's a game. When I said scheme, what I mean on that is if you close a post, take it off the plot plan, whether it's needed or not, that's one less body you need. So now it makes you look less short-staffed, even though that post is needed. And we all know that the duties and the functions of most of these posts don't cease to exist. They just get carried on by somebody else. And somebody at the meeting pointed that out, and they did a better job than I ever could as explaining it. But I don't believe that message was taken. The commissioner went on to say that, basically just what I reiterated, that they wanted to close the post, take those off the plot plan, and go on its way. But then he talked out of both sides of his mouth, because a minute later he said, but if we had full staffing and I have everything, then I want to keep everything open, and we don't have to get rid of any plot plan post. So which is it, Dan? I don't. He did get into the halt. He was asked directly, questioned directly about legislative changes, about chapter amendments on different things, and then someone asked him specifically about halt. And he said that there's absolutely aspects of halt that he agrees with. He is not going to be the one to ask for a repeal or a change to halt. And his words, I don't subscribe to get rid of halt. For the last 10 to 12 years, there's been an upward trajectory of assaults that's not related to halt. So if there's already been a bad trajectory, and we know we're dealing with a much more violent inmate, especially after the Rockefeller laws, and we can have a debate about all that. But if you know that the trajectory is sky high and going up, why would you make a bad situation worse? And you've been in every position, so doesn't that fall on your shoulders? I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm looking at it backwards. But his caveat to that was, let's not talk about halt per se. Let's change the narrative. And we can move people, we can move the conversation to change the narrative halt, and let's talk about, what we can agree with. Because as soon as you say change or repeal halt, his words were, everybody just shuts down and nobody listens after that. That may be, I don't find that to be 100% accurate. I know some of the assembly people and senators that I speak with are in full full agreement of changing or a total repeal of halt. He may be right as far as the majority. Obviously, there's no super majority anymore in the legislature, but he says that it's a national problem, which part of that is true, part of that is not true. I work with different agencies, and the way that they handle things and the way that they think about the segregated and confined and solitary confinement is way different than New York, yet they still seem to function. The way that their commissioners and governors handle things is way different. Some of it's very refreshing because they don't act like a complete maniac and go off and do a knee-jerk reaction and do a thought-out methodical plan, even if it's something that they don't necessarily agree with. This isn't reinventing the wheel. But I'll leave my connotations on comparing different commissioners to another time in another podcast. So, but he did say that, you need to change the narrative, modifications, maybe, repeal, no. Someone said that, there's a vote of no confidence, told him straight up. Obviously, he said he already knew about that. And it came up in more than one conversation about a vote of no confidence to the commissioner. And he said, basically, I know. And what can I do to change that? What can I do to be better? And give me examples. And people did give him examples. I don't think he was, his exact words were, point to the thing that I can do differently. So I got to give him his kudos where kudos is due. He took the bullet, so to speak. And he listened to people go off about different things. He deflected a lot of that. There wasn't a whole lot of answers because he doesn't have a whole lot of answers. And I understand that too. That particular portion of it is not a shot at him. But at least he understood that why people, and it came up even again at the end about vote of no confidence. And then everything that I've been reading online in the last 48 hours is everybody seems to want a vote of no confidence against this commissioner. But people did say that it's not safe. The one gentleman who spoke said, I don't know if my wife is going to leave me, kind of think that kind of hit home, right? When you hear these personal pleas, and I get up the messages all the time, so I know this is for real. But I did like the comment that I don't know if my wife is going to leave me. My wife tells me all the time that she is a married single wife. I just thought that comment was great. And everybody after that kind of got into the same feeling that's going on today, is that there's no repercussions for bad behavior by inmates. And I think even the inmates would feel the same way, right? If they know that they're towing the line and doing the right things, they want to be protected too. But if inmate X is pushing up on inmate Y, and inmate Y, what's he going to do when he knows this guy is not going to be in any disciplinary trouble? He's just going to come right back out and push up on me again. So it's not safe for staff. It's not safe for inmates alike. And we've talked about that before. And because we have so much to get to, I'll save that too. But tier 6, no repercussions for an inmate. That was a big thing. Again, like I mentioned before, he got called out for his cavalier attitude. I love that because that is true. Family life balance. They need help. Families need help. We know that that's true. Assaults are serious. Why are you downplaying assaults? That was a great line because that's what he does. He kept saying that he gets cornered in these media, and the only time he talks to the media is when he has to respond to the union when they're trying to hold his feet to the fire. And good for the union for trying to hold his feet to the fire. That's what he needs. But to say that you're responding and you're getting boxed into a corner, that's not necessarily true. That's a cop-out. And what else? Like I said, the assaults aren't serious. He downplays the assaults. We've heard that. I've heard that in the public protection hearings. I just heard that again in the program hearing that happened last week in the assembly programs for DOCCS last week testimony. He said it to countless media outlets. I mean, if his lips are moving, he's lying. The other part that I thought was great is one of the officers brought up about getting into the post and the plot plan and closing down post and the combination of duties is that I'm a response. I have a job to do, but yet you have me because on weekends there's nobody in horticulture. I have to go water plants. And that stuck out to me. That strikes home. You got to water plants in order to protect the officers and inmates alike. I mean, that's just crazy because they're short staffed that post obviously doesn't exist anymore. So I just don't know where you go with that. And he's and Mr. Martuscello goes on that he's representing the officers and security staff to the governor and to the legislator. And how can we help you? And he's the messenger. So I'd like to be there, a fly on the wall for some of these messaging things. someone called him out and asked him if he called the death gamble bill, if he actually would call Hochul, Governor Hochul, about the death gamble bill. As we know now that has been vetoed. So obviously until next budget or next legislative session, it's a moot point. But he was very careful to tap dance around it, though he said he supported it. And we'll give him kudos for that. He said that, right? So he said the right thing. But then when he got asked repeatedly, will you call the governor now that we've brought this to you right now and tell her that you support it? And then he's like, well, she already knows. So obviously he knew that this was going to be vetoed, didn't want us to go down that, didn't want to probably fib. So he said no. And the other part with that was he get into the percentage of violent inmates, like I touched on earlier. And he went on to, before when we had the different type of inmate, the inmates now are 73% of the inmate population are violent offenders. And that would go along with why you need a change of halt and why you need disciplinary sanctions and repercussions. So loss of rack, keep lock, that was all talked about. He said that he remembers being an officer and working a housing unit. And I don't know how true that it is, because if there was, and he remembers those days, there's no sense of urgency to anything that he's saying or doing. Actions speak louder than words, Mr. Martuscello, and your words ring hollow. So it still went on about the I'm still if someone, again, we get back to the vote of no confidence that started all this. He was very quick to say that almost maybe it was just me, because maybe I'm a little cynical, a little jaded, but I wish you could hear it for yourselves, or those that have been there, to give me a little better read on it. But he's like, well, you do the vote of no confidence tomorrow, I'm still your commissioner, like kind of rubbing that in your face. That goes to the ego of this man, and I see that, because that's just how he is. But having heard that, I was like, wow, okay. He did kind of backtrack a little bit on it, and but he again, he says one thing and then he's got to take it another step. And then he's like, I am your commissioner, but also I'm the commissioner of the inmates. Well, no kidding. Why do you even have to say that and rub that in the wrong way? I'm in the commissioner of inmates too. Well, yeah, we know that your policies all go more for the inmates than they do any proactive policy for security. So of course we know that. And then he went on to the last thing was about the sergeant's exam, about how civil service is redoing the scoring mechanism. And then after they do the scoring portion of it, they're going to do manual reviews to do that. And they're looking at some time of end of January as far as when they'll be reissuing the scores, telling everybody if their score had changed. And then you would have another opportunity to appeal after that. So we'll get into the last portion of it, which, like I said, I touched earlier about the memo that the commissioner put out about changing body cams, the times that they're supposed to be on. I'm not going to give out the specific policy on a podcast, just for certain security concerns, though the inmates know about it. This memo that he had everyone sign for, and do and actually sign that you read this and know about this policy. And in some of the facilities, this was left out in plain view of the inmates, which is absolutely ludicrous. But then the next day, he turns around and lets all the inmates know, and we're going to touch on that right now, because this is absolutely disgusting. So, he's got a knee-jerk reaction. And let's read this in full for those that are listening to it on the audio podcast and can't see it here. And this is to the incarcerated population from Daniel F. Martuscello, III, Commissioner. Subject, use of force investigation, and dated December 19, 2024. As Commissioner, I want to be transparent with you by acknowledging an ongoing internal and external investigation into recent use of force at Mercy Correctional Facility. This incident resulted in an incarcerated individual being transported to a local hospital, where he was tragically pronounced deceased. Given the circumstances of the inmate, let me back that up. Given the circumstances of the incident, I ordered an immediate investigation by the Department of Special Investigations, OSI, and made immediate notification to New York State Police and the New York State Attorney General. My executive team and I are committed to proactively working with the stakeholders and outside law enforcement entities to achieve our common goal of uncovering the truth and finding justice. It is important that you know that the department takes seriously our mission of protecting all individuals in our care. Consistent with that mission, the department is committed to holding staff to the highest standard of public service and has a zero tolerance policy for violence within our correctional facilities. Excuse me, it says facilities, not correctional facilities. Moreover, in the interest of enhancing transparency and accountability, the department has invested millions of dollars in installing fixed and body-worn cameras throughout the state. If you have any questions, or if you have any concerns, rather, about employees' misconduct, I am encouraging you to promptly address them by advising any correctional staff or OSI directly about your concerns. As a reminder, you may contact them by dialing 444 or mail to the Office of Special Investigations Intake Unit, Harriman State Campus, 1220 Washington Avenue, Albany, New York, 12226. So nothing wrong on the premise of nothing that I don't think that every employee subscribes to. It's when and how and the tone of the delivery once again. So you're taking a bad situation of whatever happened with this incarcerated individual that was pronounced deceased, and I'm not going to get into specifics because I don't know the specifics. So obviously he does, and thought that there's going to be some type of public reaction. So put this out to try to downplay it. I totally understand that. But when you take this type of enthusiasm and you throw gasoline on top of a fire after your memo that you put out yesterday, and now you don't have the same enthusiasm that you do when staff get assaulted, raped, or attempted rapes, or sexual harassment, or any of that. You don't put out memos. You don't tell the inmates that they should be on a different behavior, or that remind them of their discipline, or help try to change the discipline procedures. You're automatically fueling the fire that's going to lead, in my opinion, an already emboldened inmate is going to become even more emboldened now because of the incompetence of this commissioner. You just threw gasoline on a fire because of a knee-jerk reaction that you have to a bad situation that I'm sure that happened in some context. I'm not going to say that. I'm just saying something happened, not what happened. That made you all of a sudden have these knee-jerk reactions to policies that are not going to work. And you just embolden every inmate out there to commit more assaults that are already going on and rewarding behavior. And that's why when I opened up this podcast, I said, the pizza party commissioner, he is the commissioner of pizza parties. Besides, we have the commissioner of nepotism, commissioner of corruption, the other people, or I'm not going to say other people, other nicknames that people have for this commissioner. But this is really sad because where is that enthusiasm that's been going on for the last years? And especially since you have had the job, you don't have the same enthusiasm that you do for it. Nobody believes that there should be a death of anybody. You know, I find that hard to believe that anybody would wake up in the morning and just say, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, and there's going to be a death. I don't believe that. That's bullshit. But to take an inmate memo to the whole inmate population and say the things that you're saying is just it's just incomprehensible, or I can't even speak because I'm so upset about it. It's just unreal that he would even do such a thing. But in the Commissioner Martuscello way, let's react knee-jerk, and that's the problem with this department, is everything is reactionary and nothing is preemptive. Let's stop this. Let's take a time out. Let's how things are going to play out, and then let's take a comprehensive approach and deal with things in a realistic manner. And now, who is going to take the job? Who is going to want to stay? Like I said, with the other memo, you've already changed the officer of the day routine. You've changed the way people operate coming to work on an already bad situation. And nobody, let's be honest, nobody wakes up and says, hey, today I want to be a correction officer. It just doesn't happen. So you're taking a negative environment and you're making it more negative, and then you're piling on. So how does that work? I just don't understand that. The people already don't think that you support them as it is. And now you have these silly memos coming out, and the timing, the tone, and what you're saying is just piss poor, if you ask me. I just don't understand it. I just can't wrap my head around it. And like I said, nobody that's working in the correctional facility, whether it be civilian or security staff, nobody put those inmates in that facility. New York State, the judicial system, and the law enforcement policies or laws, and a jury of their peers in most cases put those people where they ended up. Nobody did that to them, and I don't believe that anybody should assault anybody on any realm. Inmates shouldn't be assaulting officers. Officers shouldn't be assaulting for no reason, except for to protect themselves or a third party. No one is condoning any type of abuse. So don't take my words out of context. But to turn around and make a bad situation worse, and to play this out where you already have an emboldened inmate, and I'm going to say it over and over again because it really rings true, and you're going to have that. We just had an incident the other day. I'm not going to mention the facility, or we already talked about a couple of inmate deaths that have happened, natural causes or alleged drug overdoses, that, you've had inmates just recently surround a security supervisor. That is not an everyday occurrence. And why is this occurring? Why is it occurring with more frequency than it has ever before? And it's because they feel that they can get away with it. And the reality is they can. It doesn't make sense. When you reward bad behavior, what do you get? Whether it's on the street, whether it's children in a home, whether it's anywhere, when you reward bad behavior, you're going to reap more bad behavior. Pizza parties, ice cream socials are not the way to go. But to even take that off the table, rewarding bad behavior, which has gotten us to the point that we were or are, and you wonder why. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not condoning everything, but if you look at the reasons, Cornell did a study, I've talked about this many of times, that the correction officers talked about the reasons that came out of their strike in 79 was because they felt that all authority was taken away from them. They didn't have a choice anymore because all authority was usurped by them because of the legislature and the judicial system. Does that ring true today? Absolutely. And I implore everybody and anybody that wants a copy of it. I did it. I went to school there. I did a paper on it. So I'll gladly share that with anybody that wants it. And I have shared it in the past with many people. But if you look at those same things, it's almost like you're looking in the mirror and saying the same thing is happening today. Again, nobody's agreeing with any type of abuse, so whether it be on staff, on civilian, on security staff, on inmate, nobody is saying that. But at the same time, you can't keep rewarding bad behavior and coming out with these memos that pour gasoline on a fire without waiting and doing a thought out plan and saying that, hey, if something needs to be changed, and no one is ever saying that changes aren't welcome, but let's talk to people and implement them in a rational way. But just writing crazy memos because you're pissed off and you have an ego and you want to throw gasoline on the fire is not the way to go. And you want to know what that comes down to? Self-preservation. Think about that. Why did one person write a memo the way that it came out and sounded the way that it did? Do you think that maybe if a bad incident came out, do you think that maybe the commissioner may be in trouble? Maybe this commissioner gets scapegoated and he loses his job? Is this self-preservation? I bet you it is. I'm thinking yes. And that's it in a nutshell, self-preservation, because we have a commissioner that cares more about himself than the people under him. I hear it every day. I hear it from the officers. I hear it from the people that work for him. I hear it from other management people. So I'm not the end all be all. I'm nobody. I'm retired. I've been just sitting here talking on a podcast with the facts that people give me and the information that I glean for myself. So with that, I will close my rant on today's episode of the Working in Hell podcast. And, I wish everybody to be safe. And as we close it out, I just want to make sure that because this will be the last podcast of this year, I was probably going to scale back, if not stop altogether on the podcast. But now that people are trying to assault my character, I think that I must have struck a nerve. So I must continue. But because it's the podcast before the holidays, I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And for those that don't celebrate Christmas as I do, happy holidays to you and your family. And more importantly, be safe. It's a special time for everyone, both good and bad for some, because the holiday season sets in for some depression, and especially those that have to work on the holidays. So my heart does go out to you, but I do want to wish you a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays to you and your families. And as I say, every podcast, or I try to anyway, to be kind out there, because you never know what the person next to you is going through. And that hits home with me a lot. So thanks for bearing with me again of another hour on the Working in Hell podcast. This is Vinny Blasio. Today is the December 19th. So those that are keeping track, that's when I make them. And then they're usually released a day or two later. So you know that how they correlate with the memos and the information that you received. And again, if you have any questions, I'm always available. I do appreciate the private messages. I appreciate the text. I appreciate the email. Again, is Vinny, V-I-N-N-Y, Blasio, B-L-A-S-I-O, Vinny Blasio at Outlook.com. Thanks again, everyone. And we'll see you again in 2025. Merry Christmas.
You've been listening to the Working in Hell podcast with Vinny Blasio. Find this podcast on any of your favorite platforms like Audible, iHeart, and Spotify. And be sure to check out www.workinginhell.com for more information and important links. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.